and this is our Curated Cuisine program for tonight with Irene and Margaret Li, who have written a book called Perfectly Good Food, a totally achievable zero-waste approach to home cooking. First, I want to thank our sponsor, Cambridge School of Culinary Arts, who have prepared a couple of dishes from the cookbook, as you've already tasted, the gazpacho, and we have a little piece of citrus cake that we'll be serving afterwards, after the program as well. They are also giving away a $150 gift certificate to the school, so if you haven't already signed up, do so at the reception afterwards. Check out their website. It's cooking classes, it's a private party. I've been several times. It's a beautiful space. It's great fun. So sign up for that gift certificate. We'll announce the winner tomorrow, and we'll email you whoever the winner is. The Li sisters. Their previous book was the award-winning Double Awesome Chinese Food. They opened Mei, the Brookline restaurant, and go-to lunch spot for many of us at WBUR for many years, and now run Mei Dumplings in South Boston. Irene is also a 2022 James Beard Leadership Award winner and a frequent moderator for our Curated Cuisine series. They've just come back from, I believe, a 5-tour book tour with their mother in an RV, and there's their mother in the audience, and I heard that you had a blast. Barbara Moran is our intrepid reporter on all things environment and climate change related. This topic is dear to her heart, and she leapt at the chance to interview Irene and Margaret. Take it away, Barbara, and the Li sisters.
Everybody, get up here without falling down. Okay, so far so good. Okay, excellent. Hello, look at the Li sisters here, yay! Okay, so we are going to talk about food waste, eating your garbage, fantastic. And I talked to both of you for the first time when I was working on Cooked last year, because I wanted to think about food waste in terms of climate.
Yes.
And you guys are sort of way ahead of this, on this topic. And tell me how you started thinking about food waste and writing a cookbook about it.
Great question. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having us. We are the Li sisters, as has been said. I am the middle sister. My real name is Margaret, but my nickname is Mei, which means little sister in Mandarin. And we started our restaurant because our brother had the idea, and he kind of convinced his two little sisters to go into the business with him, and we convinced him to call it Mei. And in running this small business, for the first time we were in the food business. We kind of are self-taught and realized how much in the restaurant industry your food costs, if you're putting any food in the trash, you are kind of putting money in the trash. Your expenses, all of that is so sad when you watch that go into the garbage. And so that, plus our experience writing our first cookbook, when we realized how specific they asked you to be when you're writing a cookbook. They want you to say exactly 1 tablespoon of chopped parsley, stems removed. And sometimes the stems are delicious, but also what do you do with a bunch minus 1 tablespoon of parsley? Sometimes it just sits in your fridge and then it just goes bad, and then you feel sad about it. Yeah. And so we kind of combined that restaurant experience with the home cook experience that I think probably most of us have had, of having these good ingredients that you had such great intentions about just get really sad and end up in the garbage. And we wanted to find ways to help make it easier and feel more empowered for people to use up that food.
Was there something in the restaurant biz that you were throwing out a lot of that you thought, oh, I don't want to use this?
One of the things we often used was kale for our magical kale salad. And the kale stems can be a little bit tough, and you may not want to eat them raw the way they appear in the salad. But if you chop them finely and puree them in a food processor with basil and other herbs, that is the local greens pesto that we put on the Double Awesome scallion pancake sandwich, which some of you may be familiar with. And that pesto was home to so many ingredients that otherwise would have gone in the compost. So arugula with...
eating garbage pesto.
That's right.
We don't call it garbage
The Li
pesto.
sisters have this amazing pesto.
That's right.
You have to brand it as local greens pesto.
Exactly. Local greens that had some holes in them, but were perfectly good, and that were maybe a tiny bit yellow, but that made the pesto a nice bright color. So, and I think, you know, all restaurants do this to a certain extent. They're not telling you that this is part of their zero waste campaign, but when you're in a restaurant, making sure you don't waste food is your job. Most of us do it as a hobby, as home cooks. But when it's your job, that is your raw materials that are going in the trash if you can't figure out a way to use them. And of course, all of this has to be within reason. We don't want to generate profit by feeding people actual garbage. But I like to say, live fast, eat trash, and our publisher hates that. So don't tell her I said it.
For the audience, by the way, you can ask questions. If you have any questions for the Li sisters, go to sly.dough and enter #cuisine, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. But my next question is about the connection with food waste and climate, because you're talking about waste in the restaurant industry, and there's also, it's a huge climate problem too, and you talk about this in your book a bit, and I have some stats here, which are like kind of shocking.
They are scary.
Yeah. Okay, so 35% of food produced in the U.S. is never eaten. Boo. And about a third of all this wasted food comes from people's houses.
It's actually a little more than that, we think.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
And what's interesting is, you know, I'm the first person to say corporations are causing climate change and they're putting the onus on us. But when it comes to food waste, consumers really do have an opportunity to make an appreciable difference. And of course, you know, big corporations, restaurants, they have a very clear economic imperative to use everything up. And at home, again, like we're not so good at it. It's not necessarily top of mind. And so I like to think that this is a place where an individual consumer can make a difference.
What's the connection between like food waste and climate? There's a couple connections that you talk about.
But so the statistic that you're saying, the last we checked, it was 48% of food waste in the United States is household generated. And then in your average landfill, 25 to 30% of that is organic waste. So it's food that is in the landfill. And when that is in anaerobic conditions, not with oxygen, like in a trash bag, then it produces methane. And methane is one of the most potent greenhouse gases. So this food waste is actually has a pretty direct link to that, bad for the environment.
And when you think about food, making it all the way to the consumer, to your refrigerator at home, it has had every single resource poured into it, right? It used up land, water, fuel, fertilizer, the transportation, the grocery store that sold it to you. And so that is really where the most value has been added. And when it goes in the trash, all of those resources are essentially wasted.
Is there one thing that you find that is thrown away most at your house or at a restaurant? Like what do people chuck the most?
We have a lot of people tell us about their leafy greens. What else out there? It's, you buy your salads with all these great intentions and these fresh herbs that are just so expensive, and then you think that you're going to get to them, and then you have pizza a few nights in a row. At least that's in my house. And then you think, oh, this salad is just looking so sad now. So greens we hear a lot about.
And you guys have in this book, this wonderful book, which is out there. You have all these like great tips in there of not just like how to not waste food. You have all these like recipes, which we'll talk about in a sec, but also ways to like set up your fridge so that you don't chuck stuff as much. So do you have some like favorite tips for people?
Yeah, I think the key one is if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And refrigerators are very deep. And we don't have enough food for them to really need to be so deep. So we try to store everything near the front, and we also advocate for what we like to call an eat me first box. So
Eat me first box.
Eat me first, yes. And this
This
is
actually
just a,
says eat me first.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. It's most effective if you do label it, eat me first.
Exclamation point.
This comes from the way we did it at the restaurant, which is that ingredients that are maybe opened but not used all the way up, or that are coming up on being too ripe, go into a designated place, into a little bucket or basket, and it should be right in front of you at eye level, and then the cooks in your restaurant can't miss it. And then when you're at home, you can't miss it either. So I am very guilty of always having a couple lemon halves molding somewhere in the back of the fridge. I don't think my husband's here yet. He cleans the fridge, not me. But if you have half a lemon or half an onion or a tomato that's like really ripe, you put that in the Eat Me First box, you keep it at eye level, and every time you go into the fridge, it's right there waiting for you to use it.
Oh, that's a great idea.
We love that one.
Those half lemons.
Yes.
Yes. We'll talk about where those are. All right. Question from the audience. What is a crucial shelf ingredient everyone should have on hand that could tie together whatever other foods?
Great question. We have a list of those in the book, and there's a lot of them, but I do feel like we have a recipe in the book called Anything in the Kitchen Pasta, because if you have pasta, you can have a meal. You could use freezer items or fridge items or pantry items, and you can put it all together, and you use the pasta water, and it helps you make a sauce. And it's something that, at least in my house, I've got small children and grown adults, and pasta brings us all together.
Yes, I love that. We have a bunch of recipes in the book called hero recipes. I like to call them superhero recipes because I think they're so great. But they rescue your food, and they can rescue your leftovers, and a lot of those are based around pantry staples. One of my favorite staples that you actually would keep in the freezer, not in the pantry, but is so good anyway, is to have puff pastry. And then you can turn pretty much anything, any leftover, into leftovers that are franche. And then what is more fun than that?
Yes.
So, turning it into a galette or,
that's nice.
a little puff tart of some sort.
Your garbage galette.
That's right.
Barbara really gets
We need
it.
your help with branding.
I know.
So that's something that, that I
that's a
now
great
like
idea.
to keep on hand.
Okay, so pasta, puff pastry. What about like sauces, condiment type things?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we like to use up the things to make condiments. So the idea of the
that's next
local
level,
greens
I don't know.
pesto, right? The local greens pesto, you can use, people think, okay, I have to buy the fresh basil and the pine nuts and the Parmesan, and those are all really expensive ingredients. You can use arugula or kale. You can use the walnuts that you bought in that bulk bin from Costco and you really thought you were going to use up and you didn't get to. You can, substitute any nut you want. And
Interesting.
then you make a pesto and you pop it in the fridge, and then you can use that to layer on your fancy puff pastry or galette, or stir it into your rice, or mix it into your pasta. So you can use things up in the condiments and then use the condiments to help make your hero recipes more delicious.
And you can also
going.
put a lot of condiments in the freezer. So we talk a lot about the freezer in our book. Freezing pesto, I think, is pretty common. But any sauce that you make, you can pour either into like an ice cube tray or just put it in a Ziploc bag and freeze it in a flat layer. And then you don't even have to defrost them. You just pop the cube out or you break off a chunk from the Ziploc bag and you're ready to go. So I think, for me, sauces are... all food should have sauce, in my humble opinion. And so, building up your pantry and your freezer with all of these different things that can help you make your ingredients a little more exciting or novel, I think is kind of key to the kind of eating that we're advocating.
Cool. All right. We're going to go to some specifics because I'm going to show you some pictures of my fridge, if that's okay. All right. So I took some pictures of my fridge last Thursday. Thursday is usually the bad day of the week because we go shopping, Saturday, and then by Thursday it's grim.
Ooh.
And there's bits and pieces of things,
All right.
and then
You really feel like takeout.
right. So we'll show some pictures, and I made this is my fridge last Thursday. Somebody asked me if this is going to be fridge porn, and I said no, I don't think so. It's the opposite of that. All right. So and then we're going to have a list of everything too. Okay. Top shelf. This random pico de gallo, these black beans that were kind of flavored, maybe not, more pickles. Part of an orange, like you're part of a lemon.
Okay.
the scary ricotta cheese. Okay, then what else do we have? I think it was ricotta cheese. My husband said I could do this. So we'll have a container of hummus. This weird mango pineapple stuff that was starting to dissolve. And then some milk. You guys have some strong opinions about milk, I believe, from your book. Then 5 shriveled and almost moldy strawberries that I don't know what to do with. And then we had an audience question about whether it's okay, what do you do with moldy things if you just cut it off? All right, there's some random containers, okay, and then this is close up, random container of leftover kung pao cauliflower, which I was really proud of, but then there's this little bit left, and I put it in a thing. Okay.
Amazing.
All right, for sure. Iffy scallions. You can see the iffy scallions there.
Exactly know what you're going to do with those.
Iffy ginger, and somehow I ended up with like so many carrots shoved in there. I don't know why.
1 zillion carrots. Excellent.
This is
I think there's some more.
fun.
For sure, there's 1 orange, 1 lemon, and like 20 limes. And they're getting those weird brown patches on them.
Amazing.
And I'm just
we've
like,
got so many ideas here.
Okay, so I think we should start.
all right, want to start? All right, you're going to jump right in.
I am so
there's
excited.
more.
Wait,
There's
more. Bottom drawer. So, 600 pounds of Parmesan and cheddar cheese, 1 little thing of smoked salmon, and a bunch of random bread. There's so much, random bread.
Ooh.
And this is the fridge.
This is in the fridge, yes.
Okay, got it.
Oh, you're going to judge me.
No, I
can
wanna
tell.
say-
No, I can feel the judgment.
Because the bread, so much of that bread can just get popped right in the freezer.
All right, fridge doors, pickled stuff.
I love all your pickled things. That's exciting.
Okay, good. Condiments there, that.
Amazing.
Kitchen garden habanero sriracha, the best.
Oh, look.
Lots of butter. Love it.
Okay.
Beer and wine,
I
important.
think that's, all right.
How does this make you feel, Barbara? Thank you for sharing this with us.
I don't know. This is actually, I would say, much better than usual for a Thursday because there's actually like some edible stuff. I guess you'd say everything's edible. But look, there's some egg. But I would just, I would take this and make just leftover stuff. I'd probably just warm a few things up.
Right.
And be whatever.
So I think maybe we should start by talking about when you really should throw things out because that does happen.
And it is okay.
Yes. Do you want to?
We're not so, a lot of people, when I tell them I'm writing this book, they're like, oh, I can't throw anything out in front of you. Like, it's totally okay. Things do go bad. It is okay to throw things out and not judge yourself. And sometimes I sing like Elsa when I'm putting something in the compost. I go, let it go. It's totally okay. Especially if you have a way to compost and then it is of value and it's going back and saving those nutrients, and that's wonderful. So, if something has mold on it, then sometimes you can cut things off and that's fine. If it's, a soft cheese or something that's liquidy, then it probably should go into the compost. The smell test is actually, pretty valid. We are evolved biologically to help identify when things are not supposed to be eaten. So if you go, ugh, then it's good to compost that. But things like your old ricotta, the expiration
I don't even want to do the
date.
smell
So,
test.
I know, that's the thing where you're like, we always like to talk about expiration dates being a good guideline, but not necessarily a hard and fast rule. So one of the things that a lot of us don't realize about expiration dates is they're not really a safety thing in most cases. They are more of a manufacturer's best idea on when something is at its peak quality. So it's really that something might not be as crunchy as they would like it to be, or that the color of something might change slightly, but it's generally totally fine to eat, especially if it's a pantry item. Items like deli meat you want to be more careful of, and of course, who are you feeding? Is it someone elderly or an infant or someone immunocompromised? Be a bit more careful. But with lots of expiration dates, we encourage people to use their 5 senses, smell, look at things, do they feel slimy, and also your common sense. You can Google things, and the internet will often tell you whether something should really be thrown out or whether you've got some leeway there.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah.
So
Did I answer the question?
Irene takes over.
I'm sorry. I'm too excited.
What excites you most in this tableau?
Yes. So the first thing that comes to mind is the iffy scallions and iffy ginger.
Oh.
We have one of our favorite recipes is ginger scallion oil. And we have a sort of a version of it in our cookbook where you chop up your aromatics, really small, and you heat up some oil, and you can put other things in here too, garlic or chilies. You can make a chili oil, and you pour the hot oil over it, and it kind of cooks everything, and this amazing smell wafts through your kitchen, and you salt it so it's nice and well seasoned, and then you can put it on everything. Put it on your eggs, you put it on your rice, you put it on your pasta.
Wow.
You make fried rice with your kung pao leftovers, and it's already seasoned, so really all you have to do is add, fry some rice in oil, and then you put your ginger scallion sauce over it, and it's a totally new meal.
Wow. Oh, that's impressive. Okay. Yeah.
There are also a lot of things here that could go in the freezer if you're worried about getting to them in time.
Yeah. There was an audience question with that I'm going to throw in there too. How should you store bread?
So I noticed you had a couple different kinds of bread, which is the way that I like to have multiple bread products also. If something is already sliced, I will often just put it directly into the freezer because I know I'm going to toast it eventually, and toasting frozen bread versus fresh bread, just turn the dial up a tiny bit more, and there's no reason to have the fresh bread and let it go moldy because that's what used to happen all the time. And then the nice bakery loaves that you have, I usually keep it out until it's starting to stale, and then I cut it up into cubes, and then I pop it into the freezer, and then I've got those cubes ready for croutons or bread pudding or fancy breadcrumbs. Anything that you want some more texture and flavor to, you've got the building blocks there in tiny bread cube form.
Interesting. Huh. Okay.
And generally, when you freeze things, you don't want there to be too much air in contact with the food. So if it's in a plastic bag, pushing out as much air as possible will help reduce freezer burn. Often you can wrap things in plastic and then in foil to provide a little bit more insulation. And generally, again, we love freezing like Ziploc bags of things in a flat layer so that, again, you can pop off a corner of it. So like I have a giant bag of garlic butter in my freezer, and it's all flat, and I can just break off a piece and eat that for breakfast or whatever.
I was just like, do you have like an extra freezer? Do you know what I mean?
So you do. Well, I used to live in North Carolina until about a month ago, and I had a large size, I have a full size fridge freezer, and then in my garage I had another full size fridge freezer, and then I had another freezer. But now I live in Glasgow, Scotland, and my whole fridge is like this big. So I have to actually be much more careful about things, and I really am rotating stuff way more often because it's exactly as Irene said, a lot of things would get pushed to the back of the fridge.
Yeah.
The depth was, things get hidden.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just quickly, I'm also seeing the makings of like a preserved citrus.
That sounds pretty highfalutin.
It sounds highfalutin perhaps, but it's basically, the recipe is in the book, but cutting up the citrus, adding salt, and just letting it sit for a long, long time.
Ignoring it for a month.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay,
Yeah.
and then what?
We like
what do I do with
recipes
it?
that are about neglect.
Yes,
Yeah.
right up my alley.
And then you can puree it for easier use. You can throw half a preserved lime in a stew or a tagine.
Interesting.
You could make a compound butter with it. Ooh, that would be good.
Also, all of those citrus could go straight in the freezer. You don't even have to cut them or do anything.
What do you mean? And then what? Then they get weird. That'd be okay?
So
I don't believe that.
A good freezer thing to know is that you're not going to put something in the freezer that is a fresh item and then get it out fresh and be able to use it raw. But if you are prepared to pop your lemons and limes in the freezer because you're only going to use them for juice and zest anyway, then your whole lemon or lime can be zested, or you zest it beforehand and then freeze the zest and the lemon separately, and then you pop it in the microwave, and then it warms up a little bit, and you just squeeze it like you would a fresh lemon.
Interesting.
And so whenever I buy a bag of lemons, I use a few, and then the rest goes straight into the freezer.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm also seeing maybe like a tortilla soup situation.
Tortilla soup situation.
Yeah, you could use both your salsas, both your picos.
Even that one is starting to like, I don't know what the word is.
Smell funny,
dissolve,
maybe.
melt.
Depending on how it smells, yeah. But the thing is, a lot of what I think grosses us out about old food is texture.
Yeah.
And the good news is there are a ton of delicious ways to eat goop. soup goop, dip goop, dessert goop, puddings, So normally I don't talk like this, but since we're all friends, it's all about goops. So you could take your pico that is kind of soft and mushy, and if you think it's still okay to eat, pureeing that is going to give you all those flavors and none of that kind of upsetting, not fresh texture.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
I also see, speaking of goop, right before, if you can catch those strawberries right before they get moldy, then they go in my house into the smoothie bag. And I think we have discussed this before,
Yes.
where I have 2 sealable bags in my freezer, and one is the smoothie bag and one is the stock bag. And I try to make sure things are going to the correct bags. But the strawberries, even with their greens on, you just, every so often you see a fruit hanging out in your kitchen that is just on the edge, pop into the smoothie bag. This especially works because I have a 4-year-old who will eat anything when it is a goopy smoothie. And once that smoothie bag is filled, you can put in your blueberry yogurt and your whole milk.
Your spinach.
And your spinach. And you can pop it all into this delicious smoothie.
Wow.
And we have a smoothie builder chart that's very flexible in the book, so it's
Oh, that's a good idea.
2 cups of fruit, any fruit.
And can you use for like the stock bag, like the vegetable stock? Can you put any kind of vegetables in there, or do they work together, or does it get weird?
Yeah, we typically recommend not using broccoli and friends, so the brassica family. If you cook those vegetables for a really long time, you ever walk into a room and you're like, somebody boiled a cabbage to death in here. That is what can happen with that kind of vegetable. So cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, those you might want to keep out of a stock. But any member of the onion family is going to be great. All of your like herb stems and stalks can go in there.
Chicken bones,
Parmesan
meat
cheese
bones.
rinds.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you make the stock? You just boil it and boil it?
Pretty much.
So we both like to
Interesting.
use our Instant Pots, but if you don't have an Instant Pot, essentially you just put everything in a pot, bring it to a boil, turn it down to a simmer, and usually veggies, you can extract most of the flavors in an hour or 2, we would say. And for meat bones, you actually can cook them until they just crumble in your fingers, and that is
bones?
when you have extracted
Holy
every
mackerel.
bit of collagen and goodness, and that's why they call it bone broth, even though it's just stock.
Interesting. I'm learning all the secrets.
So many secrets.
All right, audience question. Most options mentioned for storing are in single-use plastic. Do you have alternatives, like reusable ones?
Yes,
For sure.
We really like silicone bags. So
Those are okay for the freezer?
Yep,
Okay.
they're great for the freezer. A brand called Stasher Bag, they make really nice ones. And I actually bought 1 bag of Ziploc freezer bags before I realized that I should really stop buying those, and then I just rinse them. And I'm one of those people who has drying, reusable plastic freezer bags all over my kitchen, and my husband wishes I would throw them out, but they last for a really long time. They're very well made, so if you have bought them, it's okay. You can keep using them for a very long time.
Yeah, and the great thing about the stasher bags, as well as like those silicone ice cube trays, if they start to smell kind of funky, like maybe you froze some pesto in your silicone
Right.
ice cube tray, and then you're like making some lemonade, and you're like, I don't know if I want those flavors in there. You can actually put those in the oven, bake them for an hour, and all the smell dissipates. You get like a reset, which is pretty sweet.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Silicone, yeah.
350.
I think 350, but I would Google it.
That won't like melt. It's okay.
Well, no, it won't. The silicone is designed
to not melt.
for, yeah. I mean, if you don't feel good about baking silicone, don't do it. But it is a more recently established practice. I think Cooks Illustrated did a whole thing on it. But for me, like, those smells in the silicone are crazy. So I don't want that.
Yeah. You don't want the pesto in your smoothie.
In
No,
your
probably
ice.
not. Yeah.
Your ice cubes, it's not so delicious.
Yes, you definitely want to label them.
And that's another important
tip.
advice that we have learned from the restaurant industry is, a little thing of painter's tape and a Sharpie, you keep in your kitchen, you label your things, especially if you're going to the freezer. I always think, I'm totally going to remember that this is lentil soup. And then 6 months later, I'm like, spice cider? Beef stock? I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah. I have some questions about CSAs. which, you know what, so that you end up with all this cauliflower or
Yeah.
other mystery vegetables. So do you have a CSA strategy for when, not when you get like, oh, look at all these tomatoes, yay, not that, but like when you end up with all this, I don't know what.
Kohlrabi, for example.
Kohlrabi, like what? Yes.
Yeah.
The celery root.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in the book, we have a cream of anything soup.
Oh, interesting.
And pureed soups, I think, are delicious eaten hot or cold, and so that gives you some options. And we also recommend that if you're trying to buy a little bit of extra time on your veggies, you can roast them while you decide what the heck you're going to do with them.
Oh, interesting.
And so once you have cooked vegetables, like little kohlrabi cubes or what have you, those are ready to go into a stir fry or a frittata or a savory bread pudding with 100 pounds of Parmesan cheese. And so that can extend the life of many items as well.
That's a really interesting idea. You also mentioned in the book, you talk a lot about eggs, about sort of the many uses of eggs. Do you have a favorite egg recipe?
I personally love a frittata, and I especially like to do it in a sheet pan. And that way, if you're not doing it on the stove, you pop it in the oven.
Wait. Like a shallow sheet pan?
Yeah, and what's best about it for my family of some very particular eaters, my 4- and 7-year-olds, is that you can customize the different sections for them. So my son gets just cheese, and then my daughter gets cheese and maybe one vegetable, and then this whole corner is for my husband and I, and we get, we can forage the fridge. You could put your pesto in, and you could put your pico de gallo in, and you could put your broccoli in, you could even put some leftovers in, you could put some pickles in, you could put some hot sauce in, and you've just piled it all onto your sheet pan, and it bakes really fast because it's nice and flat, and then it's easy to save, and then the next day you can just put it between 2 pieces of bread, and you have an instant sandwich. There's your lunch.
This is like genius. So you put all the stuff on the sheet, then you sort of pour egg over it and cook it.
Exactly. And if you haven't judged the egg volume correctly, just whip up another one and add it. You can put in any kind of cheese. If you have made a cheese board for a party and you've got 10 different kinds of cheese, but only this much of each of them, you can just scatter it on a sheet pan and pour eggs over it.
Amazing. And it would work with vegan egg, too, I would think.
It should, yeah.
It should.
Oh.
I do not know.
Okay.
I have not tested it personally. So.
Yeah. All right, so we are going to make something over here. And what are we going to make? What is this we're going to make? There's stuff that we plucked out of the dumpster earlier today. Yes, out back.
I think we have only the best
Kidding.
ingredients
Kidding.
from our sponsors. We are going to be making a freestyle summer roll.
Okay.
So the idea here is that I, bought summer roll wrappers at one point. There were these rice paper wrappers, and followed a recipe the first time I made them, and then after that realized that you can put absolutely anything in these. And I kind of realized that when I was making them with my daughter, and I had prepared a whole bunch of things, and she said, can we put blueberries and the leftover soba noodles in the fridge? And I was like, ew, but sure, whatever's gonna make you eat this thing that we're making. And she was so happy about it. And so, put in whatever you like.
All right. Okay. All right, well, let's
Should we
do
do
it.
it?
Let me see. I like these things that, they're like, whoa, look what happened. That's me being flexible. So it's like,
So one thing we do
flexible stuff, right?
need is some
They're grabbing the water right now.
Oh, perfect. So we're going to get water. And so these are the rice paper wrappers, which can be bought at, Super 88 up the street. You see it here. There are lots of different kinds and lots of different sizes.
oh, here comes the water for the rice paper.
Thank you so much. That's perfect.
And we also have a bunch of perfectly prepared mise en place. So we have some really nice herbs, some mint, some basil, some lettuce, and some gorgeous cilantro. We have some cucumbers, some carrots, and a little bit of yellow pepper. We have some cooked vermicelli noodles, although you could, of course, use soba noodles, and some poached chicken and some dipping sauce. So as you can see, May is...
None of this looks like garbage, by the way. I'm just saying, this is all very fancy. But you can see how you'd have scraps
Yes.
from your
Right.
kitchen. That
You could have
use.
little
Okay.
bits of things. You
Yeah.
can have, odds and ends.
Yep.
We like to have some kind of greens because they help fill it out and make it less pokey. You're like not gonna have
yeah,
carrots
yeah.
poking you.
Okay, so you just dip that in the warm water and put
So
it
you
over there.
basically take your rice paper. They break really easily. It's totally okay if it's broken. And it's kind of like when you make pancakes and the first one's going to be ugly. It's totally okay. This one will probably be ugly. But, ugly food, still delicious. And I put it in there, and you kind of wait for it to just soften like a piece of fabric. And then you can really just put whatever you like in there.
So is there a strategy for what you put on the bottom first?
So you have to think of it like if you want it to be the prettiest things on the outside, like if you get them from a Vietnamese restaurant, maybe they might have the shrimp on the outside and it looks all nice and lined up. So if you want to make it, Instagram worthy, you might do that. But otherwise, you can sort of do it like you want to. And I sort of make a little rectangle at the bottom. I'm probably letting this sit for too long, but if you have been to Anna's Taqueria and watched them make a burrito, which I did today and was delicious, that's the basic idea. You're just making a little happy summer roll burrito.
So that was cabbage, right? The thing on the bottom.
This is lettuce.
Oh, it
This
is,
is
okay.
bib lettuce. And so, I'm just going to pick a bunch of different things. It can be anything you like, really. And I'm making them into this little pile. We'll put in some chicken. We'll put in some cucumbers.
Sounds like that. So about that amount. That's not too much.
Not too much. And the nice thing is it all sticks together by itself.
Fancy.
So there you
Also,
go.
it's gluten-free, which I like. Yay!
And
I don't know. Okay, I could try.
It's,
I have all these wires.
the thing is so nice is that, you've put whatever in it. They're like nice and fresh and crunchy. We like lots of crunchy things in them. It's fun to have the different textures.
On a little plate.
But you get to pick what you like. And this is also really fun for kids, people who want, who feel particular about their ingredients. You can put whatever you choose.
How long do I get to do this thing for?
So you can just let it go, and then it'll kind of soften up. And when it becomes that texture, well, you can. And it feels nice, doesn't it? just keep moving it around.
I'm soaking in palmolive.
Great for kids.
Oh, see, now
fun
it's breaking,
adults.
just like you said.
You can have a spring roll party.
Oh
and,
my God.
there you go. Look at that.
It's good to have the amateur doing it.
You
Thank
can just spread out the
You're like,
corners
"Look
a
at what he
little
did."
bit.
So funny. This looks like a dead jellyfish. Okay, let's see.
It
All
does
right.
a little bit.
Okay, I'll put some basil and some carrots.
And you could use, scrambled eggs. You can use any
Oh, that's
protein
good.
you
Yeah,
have.
make it like a protein
Tofu, shrimp, any greens.
This looked a lot easier when you were doing it. Okay.
vegetables. So you kind of fold at the bottom. There you
I
go.
made a mini one because I'm chicken.
Two sides. Look at that. Look at you go. And then you roll them all up.
Oh my God, this is so sad looking, but it looks, oh geez, and slippery. Slippery, but, okay, not as pretty as it. Thank you. It's edible looking. It totally looks edible, especially if you dip in the sauce.
Exactly.
I think. Yeah.
This depending on what your ingredients are, it might be a very simple flavors. It's just kind of based on the ingredients, and then you make a delicious sauce with what you've got.
Nice.
So we like a peanut sauce. If you've got a jar of peanut butter, maybe only a little bit left, you can pour in a little bit of soy sauce, a little bit of vinegar, maybe a splash of water to loosen it, and you shake it all up, and then you have a delicious nut sauce.
Wow,
Lots of
amazing.
things that you can do.
Huh, cool, all right, good, thank you. All right, let's have keep yakking. All right, the questions are coming in. Oh, do I want to taste one of the rolls? Should we taste one of the rolls?
Sure.
To make sure we're not faking, that this is real food.
They made a delicious Thai.
Should I put this over it?
Oh, yeah.
So we can spill it all over ourselves while we're eating? Okay.
All right, and these instructions and the
ladies.
recipes are all in the book too.
There you go.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I'll brave my own thing. All right. And, okay, edible? You have to say that because people are watching.
And you can also fry these in a pan if you want something that's a little bit on the crispy side.
Interesting.
Do you have to double wrap them before you fry it?
You have to double wrap?
Typically, I only wrap them once, but that's more to do with my laziness than anything else. Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. Now you're making it up. All right. Audience question. Sorry, I'm going to choke. We were cleaning out my grandparents' fridge and found lots of meat labeled from years before. Something from the greatest generation. Is the meat still edible?
I wouldn't eat that.
Yeah.
But I also think if you opened that meat up, it would tell you itself not to eat it. And so, the appearance, the feel of it, it might be super slimy. If it smells, often if meat smells fruity, it's telling you, don't do it. So I think,
Probably
don't eat
not. And that was the fridge, right? Sometimes the freezer, the freezer is hard because as long as it hasn't lost power, things in the freezer are pretty much going to stay okay indefinitely. They just might not be as delicious to eat because the longer it's been in there, the more chance it has to have gotten freezer burn, and it's really more of a question of quality than safety. But especially if it's possible your freezer lost power or something, and it's been there for ages, then bye, let it go.
All right, another audience question. You guys ready for this one? Have either of you ever been dumpster diving, like actually?
No, but I'd like to watch the TikTok videos.
I just joined the dumpster diving subreddit, and I think maybe, who's to say?
Who's to say?
But
The world is your oyster.
Yes.
The world is your dumpster.
The world is your dumpster, yeah. But,
can have
food
that.
rescue is a very important project for us as a society. So many things are thrown out because they're out of date and not because of anything pertaining to safety or deliciousness. And so we have organizations here in Boston as well as all over the country who do food rescue. And those are some of May's and my favorite organizations to support because it is so important. And those dumpsters are, as you can see on TikTok, often full of perfectly good food.
It would be canned goods, right?
It would be canned goods. It really could be anything. Often, I think baked goods get thrown away because they're considered no good after the first day. But we often have, again, freezers full of baked goods, and then those can become any number of things.
Audience question: what is the most creative food waste dish you have made recently?
Good question.
Or what are you proud of? What was the big
Can we talk about grapes?
Sure. And I will also just say I love one of the things we want to help empower people to do in the cookbook is swap and substitute. And my friend Alexis is here, and I cooked breakfast for her yesterday in her house. One of my favorite things to do is forage in her fridge because she's always got really good stuff. And the recipe said asparagus. And there was no asparagus. So I thought, prosciutto.
Yes.
And it was
now that I
delicious.
can get behind.
So, fried eggs with asparagus or fried eggs with prosciutto, it's all going to be good. You do not have to listen to those recipes, including our own. So also one of the things we try to do in the book is just use things in ways that are not exactly expected, and that gives you more opportunities and ways to use them up. So, we offer ways to cook your cucumber or put your summer squash in a cake.
Lettuce soup.
Yeah.
Well, would you eat zucchini bread? If you eat zucchini bread, then you should eat summer squash cake. They're basically the same thing. It's just rebranded.
Yeah, but I was over the lettuce soup.
Oh, yeah. Also surprisingly good.
Really?
We'll make it and feed it to you.
A cold soup or a hot soup?
Either. I like it hot. But you just, put lots of other things in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But cooked grapes is one thing that I've really come to love
All right,
over the
explain
past, over the making of the book. And so cooked grapes in a galette, which sounds fancy, but it's just someone else made pie crust, and I bought it from the store. And then you put the fruit in the middle, and you just fold up the edges, and it looks like you made a fancy French tart. And then the middle is filled with grapes, because I
Grapes
always
are
have
cooked
so
or
many
uncooked?
grapes. They're cooked, so they get cooked in the tart with the pie crust or puff pastry.
Wow.
I like to cut half of them so you have some juice but not too much, and then it looks nice. And then also cooked grapes in savory dishes was kind of blew my mind. I made a gravy where I just cooked a chicken and I put all the leftover grapes into the pan and cooked it, and they got chicken juicy, and then I made it into that doesn't sound good, but then I made it into a gravy, and the gravy had this sweetness from the grapes that was phenomenal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Have you ever had, because sometimes you go to your friends' houses and forage and make stuff, have you ever had to sort of convert them when they're like, ew, I don't want to eat your lettuce soup, and, have you had conversion stories?
Yes, absolutely. Not necessarily my friends, in my case, my husband, who might think that thing's no longer good to eat, but watch what I do with it.
Or don't watch.
Or
and
don't
she'll
watch,
tell you
exactly.
after.
Better that I surprise you after you say, that was the best. I think I had a
There was the
I had a
kale salad
incident.
incident.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
the
it
kale
was-
salad incident. Do
It was
tell.
a kale salad, and it was kind of wilted, but it had on it, Parmesan and lemon juice and olive oil and all things that would be delicious in a dressing. And so I think I made like a ranch dressing with little bits of kale in it, and I put in probably sour cream and mayonnaise and whatever else I had in the fridge. And I made a dressing, and I put it over things, and he was just, was basically like eating it with a spoon. This is so good. I was like, haha, remember that kale salad we ate 3 days ago? Gotcha.
You liked it?
Is this how you guys cooked growing up? Did you always sort of cook, like forage in the fridge and make new things?
Great question. Well, our mom is here. Hi, Mom. Our mom has a specialty.
Mom? Oh,
It's right there. Our mom has
Wave,
a...
wave. Hello, bravo, good work, Mom. Okay.
So our mom's a physician, and she was often working and didn't cook at home a lot, but she has a specialty that is all the takeout containers in the fridge.
The sauce.
The sauces,
Takeout
yeah.
containers of, those
That
little 1
needed a-
ounce.
A little like little
Guys,
duck sauce.
needed
Yeah,
it.
or like packets,
Clarification.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, a combination of
Okay.
takeout sauces and packets, and then you put it into a bowl, and she says it has to have the right mix of sweetness and acidity and still, but then she uses it to marinate her chicken. And then
Wow.
she grills it, and it's invariably delicious. So clearly we got this from somewhere, and I think it's pretty obvious where.
What I remember when we originally talked about a year ago, because you had a website called Food Waste Feast for a long time, and you were working on the cookbook, and you told me like your mother was saying that she was telling everybody that oh, my daughter's writing a book about garbage or something. Like what? what was that? Do you remember?
She claimed afterwards that she never used that phrase, so we'll see. But yeah, she thought it was a very amusing topic, and I think now, so she just went on book tour with us, and it's great. She's sit in the audience and be like, oh, I just learned so much. It was great.
But I think one thing that is important to note is that it is an amusing topic. Like, I think that there's so much fun to be had in experimenting in the kitchen, and I think maybe TV shows and cookbooks have made home cooks a little bit more nervous because it doesn't come out the way you see it on TV. That's why this book has no photos in it, because we want
interesting.
you to know that whatever you make, we think is beautiful, and it doesn't have to look like what we made. And we always say, like, if you try substituting something in a recipe and it doesn't work out, you just eat the evidence and you move on. And that sense of fun, I think, often is missing from the zero waste or sustainability conversation. It is
Right,
a very
not fun.
serious topic, but we wanted to bring the kind of like, self-deprecating, very honest, irreverent spirit that we always bring to cooking to this topic. We felt that that was a necessary part of the conversation, just to have a little more fun.
Yeah. Do you have any sense, is the food waste problem like a modern phenomenon? Do you guys have any idea?
That's a really good question, and one that we've talked about a lot on the book tour, because I think a lot of what we have in the book resonates with people's memories of maybe cooking with their grandmother or their great aunt. And, back when there was not such an abundance of food, making use of everything, preserving, putting stuff up for the winter, salting it, drying it, that was present in pretty much every culture. And we have lost that with the industrial food system, with the degree of convenience we have. And so in some ways, maybe it's skipped a generation in some families. But these are old ideas. And we're trying to, I think, apply them to a new time frame, a new type of consumer, and a really wide availability of products. But every culture has its style of using up everything.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a pretty diverse array of recipes, sort of international influences. So, I saw you've got pita bread, you can make fattoush, you can make, with your salad with your pita chips, but also fried rice is like the prime use of leftover rice. And there's tons of different cuisines that have found ways to use up things over time. Pre-refrigeration, or the way, when things were scarce, there was a mindset of never wasting things. Like, why would you ever do that? We've gotten away from that.
Sorry, one of my favorite recipes that I've made successfully at home is the cabbage pancake that has
Okonomiyaki.
Yes, the Japanese word I can't say. Yes, can you talk a little bit about that? Because there's a whole story about that.
The name.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Can you say it again?
I don't speak Japanese. I might not be doing this correctly, but okono means how you like it, and grilled is, yaki means grilled or cooked. So the idea is that it is cooked or grilled however you like it. It's made how you want it. And so there's lots of flexibility for putting different things into it. And so I actually met my husband at one of our first dates was an okonomiyaki restaurant, and they had everything from, the traditional squid and pork belly, and they had, bacon and cheese, and then they had a Thanksgiving special that was turkey, cranberry sauce, and Stilton cheese or something really weird like that.
And it's like an egg
Yeah, and they cook it in front of you. This is in London. There's a whole, like a hibachi style thing. But the idea is kind of you can do whatever you like, and I kind of want to lean into that name.
Yeah.
And then you put two sauces on it.
Yeah.
That's what's
Because there's a word in Japanese that you talk about in the book too, the word of when things go to waste.
Matenai.
Yeah.
And it means sort of an expression like, oh, what a waste, I'm so sad. And so there's all these different, cultural touch points that are making sure that we're using things to their best ability. And so many different cuisines and dishes and ways that people have evolved to use things up, and so many different versions of those things too. So a lot of our recipes are they're a riff on something or they're a suggestion, but we always encourage people, to make it the way you like it. I think the okonomiyaki kind of goes for everything in the cookbook, is to make it the way you want it, and then you're more likely to eat it, and then you're less likely to throw things in the trash.
Yeah. Do you find that food waste is a bigger problem in the U.S. than in other countries?
Definitely higher income countries, it is a bigger problem. Just you don't have quite the need to use everything in a lot of ways, and we're used to convenience and being able to buy anything we need, and particularly, here, I now live in Scotland, and here the supermarkets are, it's like they have to have everything on display, and it has to look beautiful and abundant. And there, you're more likely to just have things that are out, and you just don't see them. Or you can buy your wonky apples, a bag of irregular apples in the supermarket, and they're half price, even though they're all funny shaped. They're all funny shaped, but they taste great, and you save money, and the farmer gets paid for them, and the supermarket makes money. And so the more that we can get back to using things up and not having expectations of everything looking perfect or an idealized version of an apple, I think is better for everybody.
I think we have time for, go ahead, sorry.
Nope.
I was going to ask one more question. So you talk about the hero recipes, which I love, which are the ones that you can use all kinds of different stuff up. And so one is the scallion pancake. Can you each share one more of those with us? Anti-hero, the superhero.
I think for me, it's got to be savory bread pudding.
Savory bread pudding.
So, sweet bread pudding, I think we're all pretty accustomed to.
Yeah.
Savory bread pudding is just, instead of the sugar, you put in cheese. And instead of fruit, you put in anything savory. At May we used to serve a cheddar leek bread pudding.
Oh, that sounds so
and
good.
we baked it in these big sheets, and then we would toast it on the flat top. So good.
Oh my God.
But even the humblest kohlrabi, I think, can be transformed by dairy and eggs and bread and cheese into something that is very craveable.
Exactly, yeah. Put enough fat and salt in it and you can make it amazing.
Bingo.
Exactly. You should write a cookbook.
I'll leave that to you guys. Okay, great. Everybody, thank you so much to the Li sisters. You guys are going to be signing books out there. Going to be signing their book. The book isn't even out yet, so this is like amazing sneak previewness.
I'm going to stay here and make with something. Brookline Booksmith, our wonderful independent bookseller, is selling their books, so please go out. They'll be signing copies. And thank you, Cambridge School of Culinary Arts, who has made another little treat, citrus cakes from the book for you guys to nibble on. Next Monday, June 5th, is our next Curated Cuisine series with Hetty Louise McKinnon, Tender Heart, an ode to vegetables and her family, wonderful cookbook, and Cambridge School of Culinary Arts will again be treating us all with treats. So come back.